She was a rising star in criminal law, brilliant, fearless, relentless. Then, one summer night, Sofia Werner vanished without a trace. For 9 years, her case gathered dust, until a storm uncovered the one thing no one expected: her briefcase. Before we start, please help me get a 1,000 subscribers. And right where are you watching this video from? It started with an empty car. Early one morning in July, a silver sedan was found idling near the guardrail of the Talmor Bay Bridge. The driver's side door was open, the interior untouched, a jacket folded neatly on the passenger seat, keys still in the ignition. No purse, no phone, no note. The name registered quickly with local law enforcement: Sofia Werner, a rising star in criminal defense, known for her fierce advocacy and meticulous casework. 37, sharp, respected, and suddenly gone without a trace. News traveled fast. Headlines speculated. Reporters circled the bridge like vultures. Suicide, some suggested. A brilliant mind, weighed down by the darkness of her work. Others whispered of something deeper. Enemies made in courtrooms, secrets sealed behind closed doors. But without a witness or a sign of struggle, the official story stuck: voluntary disappearance. After a week of shoreline searches and silence, the case was shelved, closed. Sofia Werner became another name in the archives: a brief headline, a fading photo, a question mark that never found its answer. And for 9 years, nothing changed. Until one summer morning, nearly a decade later. The riverside trail along Talmor had swelled after days of rain. Water levels dropped overnight, revealing debris along the muddy banks. Branches, torn plastic, forgotten things washed downstream. 3 middle school boys, skipping class with fishing poles and summer boredom, trudged the shoreline for a better spot to cast. One of them, Eli Heron, noticed something strange wedged beneath a tangle of roots. A box, maybe a bag, half buried and dark with age. They wrestled it loose. The metal clasps were rusted, one corner warped like it had taken a hit. Inside, rotting papers, pages stuck together with time, a stale smell of damp earth, and something older. Among the mess, a laminated card still intact. Sofia Werner, attorney at law. They didn't know the name, but they knew it mattered. They flagged down a passing patrol truck. The officer glanced at the ID, paused, then slowly placed the briefcase in the trunk without a word. By the time the sun set, it sat on the desk of Detective Raina Liddell, the newest addition to Dorning County's cold case division. 9 years gone. No answers. No closure. But that briefcase had floated back to the surface, and it was ready to be heard. If she didn't vanish willingly, then someone wanted her gone. And the river, at last, had something to say. Detective Raina Liddell didn't come to Dorning County looking for ghosts. She came for the quiet, or what passed for in a department known more for stalled paperwork than active cases. But ghosts have a way of finding the right people. When the briefcase was logged into evidence, no one expected it to stir much. Recovered property, contents degraded, old papers, some ID, lost and found maybe. The tag marked it as belonging to a Sofia Werner, missing since 1998. Raina noticed it immediately. She'd heard the name during her onboarding, whispered once in the break room, like a myth. The brilliant defense attorney who vanished. One of those unsolved cases that makes you wonder how something so big could go so quiet. She took the file home that night. Raina was not the kind to be impressed by legends. Before Dorning, she'd served 5 years in Albany's Violent Crimes Division. Bloodless statements, threadbare timelines, dead ends. She was known for being calm, methodical, and hard to shake. While others burned out, chasing shadows, Raina kept digging where others moved on. But this case was hollow. The original file on Sofia Werner was barely thicker than a traffic citation. A single manila folder, its corners worn and soft with age. Inside, a 3-page summary of the disappearance, a photocopy of a driver's license, and a brief note typed in courier font. No signs of struggle. No note. Car processed as abandoned. No further investigation recommended. No scene photos. No witness interviews. No forensic log. No timeline. That was what struck Raina most. Not what was inside the file, but what wasn't. Back at her desk the next morning, she pulled the case's archival number and ran it through the county system. The database pinged one result. Werner, Sofia. File closed. Cause: unknown, presumed voluntary. She frowned. 9 years gone. No confirmed sightings. No trace since the day her car was found. And this was all that remained. She filed a formal request for the original physical evidence, most of which had been marked for permanent storage or disposal. It would take a few days to surface, assuming anything had been saved at all. In the meantime, she pinned Sofia's bar ID to her board. The photo was faded, but the eyes were clear, alert, unreadable, focused. A face that didn't belong in a footnote. Raina jotted a name beneath it. Where did she go? Then, below that, another. Or who wanted her gone? Flashback. June 19th, 98. 1 week before Sofia Werner disappeared. The air inside the courthouse buzzed with a slow, stale heat. Fluorescent lights flickered above the rotunda, and the click of heels echoed down polished corridors. Sofia Werner stood by the west stairwell, flipping through a stack of subpoena drafts, her expression tight. She barely looked up when her name was called. "You're working late again," said a clerk in passing. Sofia nodded without a smile. She was always working late those days. The case had started like any other. A teenager charged in connection with a store robbery gone wrong. 17 years old. No priors. The kind of case Sofia usually declined. But something in the arrest report didn't sit right. The rushed timeline, missing signatures, identical phrasing between witness accounts. And then things began to shift. Requests for evidence went unanswered. A key motion she'd filed vanished from the docket. Phone calls she made to the DA's office weren't returned. Her client's prior school counselor, scheduled to testify as a character witness, withdrew without explanation. When she walked into rooms, conversations stopped. Sofia had handled high-pressure cases before, but this felt different. One evening, she called her sister, Eliza, from the office phone. "Are you all right?" Eliza had asked. "You sound tired." There was a pause on the line. "I'm fine," Sofia replied. "Just don't believe anything you hear about me. If something happens, don't take the first story." Eliza tried to press for more, but Sofia changed the subject. 2 days later, Sofia arranged for a locksmith to visit her office. She told the building manager the lock was faulty. What she didn't say was that she had caught the door slightly ajar one morning, even though she was always the last to leave and the only one with a key. That night, after the locksmith left, she stayed behind and scanned dozens of documents, transferring files to labeled folders, locking them inside a small gray cabinet tucked into the back wall of her office. Just before 9 p.m., she stepped out into the corridor, paused, and looked behind her. The hallway was empty, but she stood there for a full minute, eyes on the elevator. Then, she turned off the lights and left. Over the next few days, her mood shifted, focused but distracted. She wore her dark blue coat, even in the heat, and her briefcase never left her hand. A receptionist remembered seeing her run her fingers along the edges of it, as if checking for tampering. When asked if she needed help with anything, Sofia's answer was always the same. "I'm close. Just need a few more pieces." But she never said what those pieces were. She never shared what she'd found. And on June 28th, she didn't show up for her morning hearing. Her office was locked, her voicemail full. That evening, her car was found on the eastbound side of Talmore Bay Bridge. Driver's door open, jacket on the seat. No note. No one saw her leave. No one saw her fall. But someone, somewhere, might have seen her getting close. Too close. And then, she was gone. Detective Raina Liddell parked at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac lined with maples and weathered fences. The house ahead was modest, single-story, brick trim, front porch shaded by overgrown ivy. A mailbox bore the name, E. Werner, in faded black letters. She approached the door with steady steps, file tucked beneath her arm. A woman answered before she knocked. Eliza Werner looked younger than Raina expected. Early 40s, short sleeves despite the breeze. Her expression cautious but unreadable. Her arms were crossed before a word was spoken. "I figured someone would show up eventually," she said. All it took was a briefcase floating out of the mud. Inside, the home was neat but bare. No framed photos. No visible traces of Sofia. The walls held a kind of curated stillness, like grief had once lived here but had since been boxed away. Raina introduced herself plainly, offered her card, and sat opposite Eliza in the small living room. She didn't jump. Eliza said before the detective could ask anything, "If that's why you're here, to confirm something you already believe, you're wasting your time." Raina didn't argue. She opened the file slowly, turning it toward Eliza. "We found this inside the briefcase. The ID, the notes, all hers. It's the first new evidence in 9 years." Eliza leaned forward, eyes scanning the page. Her jaw clenched. "She always carried that briefcase," she murmured. She'd checked the latches twice before leaving the office. It never left her side. Raina asked about the last time they spoke. Eliza's voice softened. 2 nights before she disappeared. She called late, unusual for her. She sounded guarded, not panicked, but like she was watching her words. "Did she say anything specific?" Raina asked. Eliza hesitated. Then she rose and disappeared down the hallway. When she returned, she held a small, taped-up shoebox. She placed it on the table between them and opened the lid. Inside were a few faded photographs, a silver pendant, and a folded sheet of notepad paper. "She gave me this the last time I saw her. Said if anything ever happened to her, not to trust the headlines." Raina unfolded the note carefully. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. "If I disappear, I didn't walk away. I've stored everything. Look in cases tied to N42. It's all there." Beneath the message was a simple signature. S.W. "What's N42?" Raina asked. Eliza shook her head. She never explained. "I asked. She just said it was safer if I didn't know." "Did she mention being afraid of anyone? Any threats?" "She never said it directly. But I knew her. She wasn't reckless. She kept duplicates of everything, locked her office every night, backed up her files twice over. She was careful, even paranoid, sometimes." Raina nodded slowly, committing the phrase N42 to memory. Before she left, Eliza reached into the box one last time and held out a small, battered key. "I think this was for the safe in her office," she said. "Or maybe not. I've kept it all this time, not knowing what it opened." The file was thicker than the others. Detective Raina Liddell sat at the long metal table in the archive room, the overhead light casting sharp lines across the manila folder marked "People vs. Daniel Grime, 1998. She'd been digging into cases tied to N42, as Sophia's note had urged. The phrase hadn't returned much in official systems. No task force, no unit. But in the case logs from Sofia Werner's final year of practice, one number kept repeating. Case N42-781. Daniel Grime, 17. Charged with the killing of an off-duty officer during a botched robbery at a convenience store on the east end of Dorning. The case had made headlines at the time. The public wanted answers. The department wanted a conviction. And they got one. But as Raina read deeper, cracks started to show. The arrest report was oddly clean. Witness statements were short, nearly identical in phrasing. There was no mention of a security feed, even though the store had cameras installed. A firearm was recovered nearby, but the chain of custody was thin. The file read more like a template than an investigation. Then came a note, handwritten, clipped to the back page. Client taken pro bono. Possible misconduct in arrest report. Requesting suppression hearing. SW. Sophia had taken the case for free. Not for headlines. Not for favor. But because she believed something was wrong. She'd file motions. Challenged the arrest. Raised objections that were never officially ruled on. And 3 days before jury selection, she vanished. With her gone, the defense collapsed. Daniel accepted a plea deal. The verdict was swift. He was sentenced to 18 years. Raina requested a visitation the same day. 2 mornings later, she was led through the echoing halls of Northvale Correctional. The guard escorted her to a side room. Plastic chairs, thick glass windows, an air of stillness too settled. Daniel Grime entered quietly. Late 20s now, lean, alert. His posture was calm, but watchful. She introduced herself. "I'm looking into Sofia Werner's disappearance." At the sound of the name, his gaze dropped. A pause. Then, "I haven't heard anyone say that name in a long time." Raina leaned forward. "You were her client. She fought hard for you. What do you remember about that?" Daniel studied her for a moment, then rested his hands flat on the table. "She told me something a few days before the trial. Said the case wasn't just about me. Said it was bigger." "Bigger how?" "She didn't say names. Just said, it's not one bad cop. It's a pattern. that if she could prove it, if she got it in front of the right people, it would all fall apart. He paused, voice low. She said, "It's not about saving you. It's about exposing them." Raina took a breath. "Did she ever mention in 42 to you?" He frowned, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think that's what she called the cluster of cases. Said the same names kept showing up in them. Same arresting officers. Same holes in the paperwork." Raina made a note. "Did she ever seem scared?" Daniel exhaled. "Not scared, but tired. Like she knew time was running out. Last thing she told me was, if anything happens to me, don't let them rewrite the story." The guard knocked gently on the glass. "Time's up." As Daniel stood, he added, almost to himself, "She was the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered." Back at the precinct, Raina Liddell spread 3 files across her desk like pieces of a long-forgotten puzzle. Each one tied to a different defendant. Each one closed with surprising speed. And in each, buried beneath the legal phrasing and redacted margins, 2 names kept repeating. Detective Gabe Rowland, Detective Steve Myler, both from District 42, the same division Sofia Werner had flagged in her note. The same division she was circling when she vanished. Raina pulled the personnel roster from the summer of 1998. Rowland and Myler were listed together on multiple task forces, joint units, surveillance teams, special response callouts. Between them, they had booked over 40 arrests that year, and in nearly every one, the arrest reports shared striking similarities. Identical language, nearly mirrored witness descriptions, a lack of supplemental documentation, few interviews, and a recurring detail, evidence recovered from the vicinity, logged without timestamp or visual record. It wasn't proof, but it was smoke. One name stood out from a footnote in the Grime case: Leon Stryger, a confidential informant referenced in an internal memo. His name never appeared in court, but Sofia had written it in the margin of a motion, circled twice. Raina ran a background check. Stryger had a record: petty theft, trespassing, loitering. He'd worked as an unofficial source for District 42 in the mid-90s, then dropped off the grid completely. The last activity on his file was dated June 26, 1998, 2 days before Sofia disappeared. A single line, no further contact. CI non-responsive. File marked inactive. Raina raised an eyebrow. The timestamp was 4:48 a.m. Too early for office hours. Too late for routine paperwork. She called the records clerk. No physical file remained. Purged in a routine archive, sweep 10 years earlier. No phone number. No forwarding address. Just a silence that had been rubber-stamped and filed away. Raina stared at the folder. Sofia had been working late, asking questions, digging through the pasts of 2 detectives who operated like they'd never be questioned. If Leon Stryger was helping her, even unofficially, it would explain his vanishing just before she did. Too many people connected to this web had disappeared or been erased. Later that evening, she opened a clean notepad and wrote a single line at the top of the page. Who knew she was getting close? Then, beneath it, she listed: Asterisk Rowland, G. Lead on at least 14 cases involving missing or altered evidence. Asterisk Myler, S. Support officer on most. Asterisk Stryger, L. Last seen alive 2 days before Sofia. She underlined their names, then circled the last one. This wasn't a coincidence. And if someone had gone this far to keep things buried, they weren't done yet. The name came up in a forgotten corner of an internal staff log: Maria Torres, Civilian Records Administrator, assigned to District 42 from 1995 to early 1999. But after that, nothing. No transfer. No retirement notice. No trace. Detective Raina Liddell dug deeper. A DMV match linked Maria Torres to a legal name change request filed in 2001, now listed as Marina Tolan. New identity. New address. Quiet life. It took 2 days to find her. A nursing facility on the outskirts of Middleton, where she now worked part-time as a caregiver. No social media. No public records since her departure from law enforcement. Raina didn't call ahead. She arrived unannounced. Marina was folding towels in a side lounge when Raina approached. Plain sweater, reading glasses perched low. She looked up warily as soon as she noticed the badge on Raina's belt. "I'm not who you think I am," she said quietly. "I believe you used to be Maria Torres," Raina said, voice even. I'm not here to cause problems. I just want to talk about someone you might remember. She placed a photo on the nearby table. Sofia Werner's bar ID. Marina froze. The towel slipped from her hands. I haven't seen her face in years, she whispered. Rena waited. After a long pause, Marina sat down slowly, back straight, hands fidgeting in her lap. She scared them, Marina said, barely audible. That's the truth. She came into the precinct 3 days before she vanished. Had an envelope. Told me it needed to go straight into the commander's review box. Said it was time someone looked at what was happening. Did it get there? Rena asked. Marina shook her head. No. I asked about it the next day. The inbox was empty. When I brought it up to my supervisor, he told me there was no such delivery logged. Her voice cracked. That was the moment I knew I had to leave. Rena opened her notepad. Do you remember anyone reacting to her visit? Yes. Her eyes dropped. That night, I passed the break room. Roland was in there, talking to Myler. He said, she hesitated. If she won't back off, she'll vanish on her own. Then he laughed, like it was a joke. But it didn't sound like one. No, Marina said. It didn't. Rena sat still. The pieces were aligning. Sofia had delivered a formal complaint. It vanished. A clerk heard a warning, veiled as a joke. And both Sofia and her informant disappeared days later. Why didn't you report this? Rena asked gently. I tried, Marina whispered. The same week Sofia vanished, I handed in my resignation. I packed everything. I changed my name. I didn't wait to be next. She looked at the badge again. She was brave. Too brave. Rena stood, thanking her. But before she turned to go, Marina added one final thought. There was a name she mentioned in passing. Someone who was helping her piece things together. L. Striger. She said he had information about an officer, someone deep in it. She paused. And 2 days after that conversation, he vanished too. The first sign was subtle. Detective Rena Liddell returned to her car after a long evening at the courthouse, her mind still replaying every word from Marina Torres. The parking lot was nearly empty. Shadows stretched long across the cracked pavement. As she approached, she noticed something strange. The front right tire of her car sagged noticeably. She crouched to check. Not a puncture. A clean slice, deliberate and precise. She moved to the rear. Same mark. Her hand froze just above the tread. Whoever did this had been close. Close enough to send a message. She stood slowly, eyes scanning the lot. No cameras. No witnesses. Just silence. By the next morning, the silence had spread. 3 voicemails she'd left for the internal archive clerk. Never returned. A forensic report she'd requested on the briefcase's zipper. Now, unavailable due to administrative backlog. Even the basic chain of custody logs for evidence from 1998 were suddenly missing from the digital system. And the copy of Sofia's handwritten note, the one Eliza had given her, gone from the case folder. Rena stared at the empty space where it had been. She hadn't removed it. No one else should have had access. Someone wasn't just watching. Someone was interfering. That night, she sat at her desk long after the others had gone home. The precinct lights dimmed around her, the soft hum of the building echoing in her ears. She opened a clean form on her computer and began typing. Court request. Comprehensive records disclosure. She listed every known case between 1995 and 1998 involving either Detective Gabe Rowland or Steve Myler. Charges, trial outcomes, defense counsel, submitted evidence logs. Any sealed files, flagged testimonies, or reversal motions. It was over 50 cases. She attached a supplemental order for judicial review, requesting immediate access to closed case logs and court recordings, citing potential misconduct patterns and obstruction concerns. It was a long shot, but Rena had seen enough. This wasn't about a long, cold mystery anymore. This was an active cover-up, still operating under the surface, quiet, methodical, practiced. As she finalized the document, her phone vibrated once. An unlisted number. She let it ring. No voicemail. She stared at the screen, then filed the report, sent the requests, and backed up the documents onto 3 separate drives. One for her, one for the DA, and one to be mailed out the next morning, just in case. The forensic lab in Pellington was quiet, sterile, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead as Rena Liddell stepped through the security checkpoint. She had called in a favor with the regional examiner, a secondary analysis of Sofia Werner's recovered briefcase, this time with priority handling. Standard protocol wouldn't have allowed a retest. But when Reyna used the phrase, possible officer-involved disappearance, doors started opening faster. Inside the evidence lab, 2 technicians worked over the briefcase with methodical precision. It lay open on a padded tray, its interior still stained from years in the mud. The leather was brittle, warped by time, but the zippers remained intact. And in the metal teeth, the techs had found something. We lifted epithelial trays. One of them said, skin cells caught in the seams. Viable nuclei. It was enough for a profile. Reyna didn't react. Not outwardly. But her fingers tightened around the edge of her notebook. They ran the sample through the state DNA registry. By the following morning, the results came back. Match confirmed. Detective Stephen Myler. Reyna moved fast. She didn't want internal affairs tipping anyone off. She drove straight to Myler's residence with a quiet unit from the neighboring jurisdiction. Officers she trusted not to leak. They found him in his driveway, watering his hedges like any other weekday morning. When Reyna stepped out and said his name, he froze mid-motion. "I'm Detective Liddell," she said calmly. "We need to speak to you about the Werner case." He didn't resist. In the interview room, Myler sat stiffly. The badge on the wall seemed to press down like a weight. Reyna placed a printout of the DNA report in front of him. "Your skin cells were recovered from Sofia Werner's briefcase. It had been missing for 9 years. Found buried along the riverbank." He stared at the paper, silent. "I'm going to ask you plainly," she continued. "How did your DNA end up on something she was carrying the night she disappeared?" A long pause, then a quiet exhale. "We weren't trying to hurt her," Myler said, voice low. Reyna didn't move. She was making noise, kept filing motions, talking about internal audits. "Gabe said we needed to scare her, shake her up, get her to back off." "Who's we?" "Me. Roland. One other. He's retired now." Myler's eyes dropped. "We followed her one night. Just talked to her. That's all. I grabbed the briefcase when she tried to leave. Thought she might have recorded us." He shook his head. "I dropped it. Somewhere by the river. I didn't even know it was missing until the papers said they found it." "And Sofia?" Reyna asked quietly. "What happened to her?" He didn't answer at first. "Then, I left her alive." Reyna leaned in. "What do you mean?" "I drove off. I thought it was over. Gabe stayed behind with her. He said he'd take care of it his way. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know." Reyna stood, her expression unreadable. The silence in the room deepened. She turned toward the mirror, gave the signal. 2 officers entered to escort Myler to holding. He didn't resist, and as he was let out, he turned to Reyna once more. "I never meant for it to go that far. But it had, and now, it was finally coming back." The trail off Route 301 was barely visible, overgrown, winding, and almost completely swallowed by underbrush. Even the oldest county maps didn't show the narrow path that curved behind the ridge. But the directions matched what Myler had described. A training cabin, deep north woods. Not on paper. Detective Reyna Liddell followed a warrant team through the trees as the afternoon light filtered dimly through the canopy. Their boots pressed in a moss-covered soil, every step muffled, every sound sharp against the silence. Then, through the trees, it appeared. A tilted cabin, sagging under its own weight. The roofline buckled, one side sunken into the earth. It looked abandoned for years, the kind of place time forgets. But someone had remembered it, and someone had used it. The perimeter team moved first, photographing and marking the area. A K-9 unit swept the site, the dog weaving through the brush with its handler close behind. It didn't take long. Near the back slope, halfway behind the cabin's collapsed wall, the dog stiffened, body alert, tail rigid, nose locked on a patch of ground covered in pine needles and dry ferns. The call came in quiet. "We got a spot." Excavation began carefully. Layer by layer, the recovery crew cleared away the forest floor. No shovels, just brushes, trowels, and quiet coordination. Roots tangled with old cloth. Soil clung to what lay beneath. Then, a technician looked up and nodded. "We've got textile." Reyna stepped closer, stopping just at the marked line. A flash of dark red fabric appeared through the dirt. Faded but distinct. A coat, partially preserved by the cool ground and the natural slope. Next to it, a weathered notebook, its spine half-cracked but pages still clinging together. And then, fragments of form. A wristwatch. A heel. And finally, what no one said aloud. The outline of a woman's body, resting in silence for 9 years. Back at the Regional Forensic Center, the remains were examined with quiet urgency. The pathologist, Dr. Ellman, spoke plainly, but with a weight behind every word. There are clear signs, she resisted. Hand and forearm fractures consistent with self-defense, he said. There's also tissue under the nails, enough to attempt a match. He paused. She didn't go without a fight. The arrest warrant for Detective Gabe Rowland was signed at 6:42 a.m. on a rainy Thursday. By the time Raina Liddell arrived to brief the marshals, his house was already empty. He was gone. Neighbors reported seeing him leave just before dawn. Not alone. 2 men with him, both former officers, one recently retired, the other suspended after an internal complaint the year prior. Security footage confirmed it. A dark SUV pulling away from the driveway, heading north. It wasn't panic. It was preparation. Raina acted fast. She issued a BOLO, a be-on-the-lookout alert, to every jurisdiction north of Dorning County. The license plate was flagged, the vehicle description sent to every checkpoint within 200 miles. Quiet coordination with U.S. Marshals ensured no media got wind of it. At 3:17 p.m., the hit came in. A border station just south of Vermont had flagged the SUV as it entered a wooded access road near a secondary checkpoint. The plates matched. 3 men inside. Calm. Composed. But not unnoticed. Raina arrived by helicopter, landing near the forested clearing where the vehicle had been pulled aside. The SUV sat under a canopy of pine, the engine still ticking softly in the rain. Officers moved in. Step out of the vehicle, Gabe. No fight. No protest. Rowland exited slowly, jacket zipped, eyes scanning the tree line. He looked at Raina, as if he'd been expecting her all along. You really brought the whole show, he muttered. Back at the precinct, he was processed without incident. No outburst. No confession. But Raina had everything she needed. Asterisk a cassette recording, found in Sofia Werner's sister's home. Sofia's voice, naming names, describing patterns. Asterisk her notebook, recovered from the forest. Notes that matched sealed trial records and described evidence disappearances in detail. Asterisk witnesses, Maria Torres, Daniel Grime, even Myler, now in holding. Asterisk and a forensic match, epithelial traces on Sofia's coat, linked directly to Rowland. It wasn't just a theory anymore. It was proof. In the interview room, Rowland sat alone as the file folder landed on the table in front of him. Raina said nothing at first, just opened the cassette player and hit play. Sofia's voice filled the space. Calm, clear, resolute. If anything happens to me, it was them. Rowland, Myler, others. I've logged what I can. They're working cases backwards, planting evidence, pushing outcomes. Rowland's expression hardened, but something behind his eyes shifted. He didn't speak. Raina opened the notebook. Her words, her handwriting, your legacy. And then, finally, she said it. You're being charged with obstruction, conspiracy, and the unlawful disappearance of Sofia Werner. She paused, and that's just the beginning. The courtroom was silent as the final verdict was read. Gabe Rowland, guilty on all counts. Obstruction, conspiracy, intentional disappearance. The weight of his actions, once buried beneath silence and system, had surfaced. Detective Raina Liddell stood to the side of the press conference, her arms crossed, expression steady as District Attorney Celeste Miles addressed the cameras. Today, we close the chapter on a case that was never meant to remain open. Sofia Werner stood for truth, and that truth has now been restored. Flashbulb clicked. Reporters scribbled notes. Then Raina stepped to the podium. Sofia wasn't just a lawyer. She was a protector, a sister, a voice for those the system tried to forget. She left behind more than evidence. She left behind a message, one we finally chose to hear. She paused, letting the silence land. Justice took too long, but today it spoke. Later that week, Daniel Grime stepped through the gates of Northvale Correctional, a place that had held him for over a decade. The guard handed him a small envelope. Inside, a prepaid phone, a change of clothes, and a letter of legal exoneration. His record, Officially cleared. Reyna waited by the curb, hands in her coat pockets, watching as he walked into the daylight. He looked older, but his eyes were still sharp. "You really did it," he said. She nodded. "We did it." He held the letter a little tighter. "She didn't give up on me." "No," Reyna said. "She never did." 3 days later, they met again, at a quiet hillside cemetery just outside Dorning, where a new headstone had been placed beneath a swaying birch. Sofia Werner, 1971 to 1998. She spoke the truth and never let it go. Eliza Werner stood nearest the stone, a single white lily in her hand. She laid it down carefully, brushing her fingers over her sister's name. "She was right," she whispered. "You didn't let her disappear." Daniel crouched beside the stone and placed the letter of exoneration, folded, sealed, beside the lily. "Thank you," he said, "for giving me my life back." Reyna lingered behind them, silent, watching. Then she stepped forward and placed a final item at the base of the headstone, a weather-worn photocopy of Sofia's original complaint, the one recovered from her sister's home. Still marked with Sofia's handwriting, still bearing her signature. She pressed it under a smooth stone to keep it from blowing away. It wouldn't last in the wind, but didn't have to. "We heard you," Reyna said softly. "Now the truth is free." The three of them walked back down the hill in silence. There were no speeches, no headlines, no applause, only closure, and a voice that had finally been answered.